Psychopaths are said to be the epitome of evil. They do bad things, they want and feel pleasure on doing bad things, and that's the only acceptable truth, right? Or do they? Yes, it can be easy to say that they do, but it is said that psychopaths often don't have the ability to understand or know what is right or wrong. Moreover, sometimes they don't even care if something is bad or wrong. They can understand it like intellectually, but it seems like they don't really have the ability to feel if something is in on itself bad. So having this said, how can you say that they are indeed bad, evil? Well, that's exactly what I will try to answer in today's video. Or at least I'll try. I'll try my best. And I could start with the basic, following a normal structure of storytelling with what is a psychopath. But like, we all know what is a psychopath at this point. They are impulsive liars, they need constant stimulation, you often see them in positions of power or as serial killers, and most importantly, as you most likely know, they lack remorse. And I am sure you already knew all of this. We have been fed with psychopaths by the news and pop culture for years, so my question here is more like a why are they like this? Are they born psychopaths? Is it environmental? Well, as it seems, the answer isn't really as crystal clear as we would like it to be. Just like everything in this fucking world and universe. Firstly, yes, it has to do with the environment that you find yourself in as a child. At least when it comes to developing serial killers that are psychopaths, which most of them are. Psychopathy and serial killers are linked. It is what it is, don't get all nerdy on me. Cases like Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, Ed Kemper, I'm sure you know about them. If not, check out my ranking serial killer videos when you finish this one. They all share a rough childhood, which makes you think if that is the key to understanding psychopathy. But we already know that it isn't. I mean, not every psychopath is a serial killer, and not every serial killer is a psychopath. Also, not everyone that suffers from childhood trauma becomes a psychopath, let alone a serial killer. The 80s were brutal, man. Kids were getting beaten left and right by their parents and teachers, but our society isn't filled with psychopaths, nor serial killers. So it can't be just that, and it isn't just that. Psychopathy is in fact deeply linked to the genetics of the individual and their physical brains, plus the environment you grew up in. You got it. Well, anyway, it's complex. Brain shit. I don't really want to get too much into detail because that isn't really the point of the video, but I still want to mention it because I find it very interesting. And also, yes, this is a serial killer / psychopath costume. Well, we as humans, in our brains, have something called serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter that regulates mood in our brains. That serotonin, after being released by the neurons, has two outcomes. It can be either reuptaked by the neuron to be used again later, or it can be broken down and reabsorbed by your body. That breaking down of the serotonin is done with an enzyme called MAOA. Thing is, some people, and interestingly enough, a good percentage of psychopaths have problems breaking down that serotonin because they have a low activity variant of that MAOA enzyme. So while their brains are developing, when they are kids, serotonin is basically flooding the brain, which messes up with the normal functioning of the brain, and it can lead to a lack of emotion regulation and impulse control, because the brain developed in a weird way because there was a lot of serotonin that, well, shouldn't be there. Another cool fact is that this gene that describes the MAOA enzyme, that low activity MOA enzyme, is present only on the X chromosome, only, which means that it is present much frequently in males, because as you probably know, males are described as being XY. This is a male. Sorry, wokes. And this is a female. Since females have two X's, if that gene is present on only one X, then this X will cancel it out, and the female won't have that low activity MAOA enzyme. But in males, they only have one X. So if the gene is on that X, the male will have problems breaking down serotonin, which could lead to psychopathic traits. It doesn't mean that it will, but it can, which I find very cool. Another physical thing that is often noticed in people with psychopathic traits is the size and development of the amygdala. I don't need this anymore. Which is a part of the brain that regulates fear and emotional intelligence. In a good percentage of psychopaths, that amygdala is 15 to 20% smaller than the average, which could explain why psychopaths often seem to not have fear and they have a lot of aggression. Now, this smaller amygdala can be genetic, yes, but it could also be somewhat related to the environment. In the book 7.5 Lessons About the Brain by Lisa Barrett, on lesson number 3 called Little Brains Wire Themselves into Their World, she essentially states that the development of the brain isn't solely linked to the genetic of the individual, but that the environment also plays a role. For example, if when you are a baby you don't get proper visual stimulation, aka if you were blindfolded for the first 5 years of your life, your visual cortex wouldn't develop as it should, and it could lead to complications on processing light and information from the outside world. Well, what if something like that happens with your amygdala? What if when you live in a corrosive, toxic environment filled with fear and aggression, your amygdala and even other parts of the brain aren't properly stimulated as they should, and they get less developed or developed with malfunctions in the future, leading you to be a psychopath or a serial killer, bro, damn. Well, it's an unknown, but what we do know about psychopathy is that it is too complex to be treated in a simple way. However, this is me talking about how it works and why it works. The point of the video isn't that, because look, we've been here trying to understand why are psychopaths the way they are, and even though we don't really know why, we know how they are, kinda. They can be impulsive, analytical, but most importantly, they have no remorse. It's like they have no emotions, or like they have no moral understanding of the emotions that they feel or that they make other people feel. Like good and bad are mixed, as if they don't really understand such ideas. Truly understand such ideas. Can psychopaths be truly bad? And I know that it might seem like a pretty obvious thing to say. Psychopaths do things that hurt others. Serial killers that are psychopaths kill people. They manipulate people to get advantage over them or to get something. And they don't care if they get hurt to get what they want. I mean, it seems pretty bad. And sure, it seems pretty bad, and it is because it is pretty bad. I'm not asking if the act in on itself is bad. If people are getting hurt, then the act is bad. I am asking if the person who did it is bad. If it was done with evil intent in the core. If psychopaths are indeed evil. In the book Mortal Questions by Thomas Nagel, in the first chapter where he discusses if death is a good or a bad thing, he argues that maybe death is bad because it deprives us from the good that we would feel if we were alive. And if we think of good and bad in those terms, as a bad thing being the deprivation of good, then yes, psychopaths, or at least the acts that psychopaths do, would be bad because they deprive good. But that again would be the definition of the act itself, not the person who imposed the act. I can step on the bug, I can kill the bug, I killed the bug. It is a bad act, but I myself didn't do it on purpose. I didn't do it with a bad or an evil intent. I just stepped on a bug and it happened to die. But I can't be called bad or a bad person for doing it. I could be on my way to charity and I could kill a bug. It would be bad for the bug, but I am not a bad person. I was going to give some money away. So, man, what am I trying to get at? Well, I need to talk about another definition first. Qualia. Let's take fear as an example. We can talk about fear in two ways. We can describe its physiological processes, sweat, body hair stands up, your heart rate increases, so on and so on. That is the description of fear that you can give. That's what happens in your body, but that's different from the qualia that you feel. From what you feel, yes, you can describe what is going on in the physical world, but the feeling you get, that's unique, that's yours. And if you don't feel it, you just don't feel it. It doesn't matter if you can describe it. Another example, color. The blind person can describe what the color red is, the wavelength, how particles interact with each other, how the eye processes the color, what signals go to the brain, how it resembles heat. But the blind person doesn't have the qualia for the color red. He cannot feel and truly understand it. He can only describe what it does to the physical world. But he can't understand what the color red truly is compared to someone who can actually see it. So what if psychopathy and psychopaths understanding good and bad fall under those lines? Because as I said before, and as you probably know, psychopaths have the ability to differentiate what is good from bad intellectually, just like you could describe a color. Something bad is something that makes someone cry, or that makes someone lose their job, or that makes someone die. I mean, they know that if they do bad, people get hurt, and that's a bad thing. But what if they just don't feel the qualia of what is good and bad? Could they themselves be considered evil? Look, again, the acts that they impose, they are evil, they are bad. But I'm talking about the person that's imposing them. If they don't really get what is good and bad, how can they be bad if they don't understand what being bad feels like, if they don't get the qualia of being bad? Again, the blind person example. A blind person can and will describe what red is if it is taught to do so. But can that person see? Can that person really, in its core, understand what the color red is and how it functions in the world? What it means to be red? Well, no, of course not. So why can't we say the same thing to a psychopath? Like, I'm not saying to not arrest people that commit crimes or that they shouldn't be punished. If someone can't live in a society, then that person can't be in a society. This is just a question in my mind that I'm trying to develop here. How would they be bad if being bad isn't even a thing that they understand? If being bad isn't a thing that they can see? Well, this is a question that unfortunately doesn't really have a definitive answer, I think, because it will probably depend from case to case. Maybe some psychopaths have the quality of a moral act, maybe some don't, maybe none of them do, or maybe all of them do. Just a stupid question that serves nothing for the development of humanity. Just the kind of things I like. Either way, I think this is it. You got no answer. In the end, just like always, just like every video that I do. Thanks for watching. If you find psychopaths and serial killers interesting, make sure to watch this video that I am planning to right now. I'm sure you'll like it. It's about serial killers and shit. Well, see you on the next one.